Welcome back to Fitness and Thinking, a podcast obsessed with 6 pillars of wellness. You have the physical, mental, social, spiritual, emotional, and financial aspects of being to consider. And for the past year and a bit now, we've caught up with experts, practitioners, and generally great people to get into each of these pillars. And often things will overlap and clash. And it's been amazing to try and figure out if there is a universal, if there is a truth that most people can get behind. And maybe unsurprisingly, across disciplines, there are commonalities, there are things that we do agree on, like going to bed at a similar time, waking up at a similar time, trying to stay hydrated, eating minimally processed food, giving to other people, not expecting things back, saying thanks at some point in the day, reflecting on what you're grateful for as much as you might reflect on what's causing you jip or grief. And then outside of that, there are loads of different ways to tackle things. 1,000 ways to skin a cat, if you will. And I think what is interesting is that when people are able to distill into phrases or stories ways of living, then we're more likely to draw upon them and remember them in those moments where we're reflecting and wondering if this is it, or if we could behave differently, or maybe be inspired to act in a way that we haven't before because we've been told this narrative of resilience or grit, and that helps us to get us through and just maybe feel a little bit better in the world. I'm looking down at my right hand. If you're listening, maybe switch to video. I have this year become interested in comics in a way that I've not been interested, if not in a while, then ever before. Marvel, I think, the main culprit for turning me off superhero narratives. The Boys after that. The Boys on Amazon started out as this incredible satire parody of Avengers slop, and then became its own slop from series 3 onwards. I'm really sorry, guys. If you finish season 2 of The Boys and you're excited, that's as good as it gets. You might as well not watch anything from there. Invincible might be worth a watch instead. Where Avengers went wrong is that it just became CGI and money making. It was interesting up to Endgame. It was massive. I remember seeing that IMAX Waterloo, the biggest possible screen to see the biggest possible superhero story, and it was a thrill. I went to the 1 o'clock in the morning showing, every single seat packed out, and it was an experience. It was an event. And after that, it just wasn't anymore. It was a waste of time and money, in my humble opinion. I didn't engage. I just didn't. I grew sick of it all. And to be honest, DC, the heroes I just didn't relate to in the same way. The Batman trilogy, Christopher Nolan, unreal. Particularly the first one, Batman Begins, and then Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's performance, we won't get past that as one of the best villain performances from any comic book adaptation. But not everything is that well told, not everything is that well presented, and yes, the use of CGI in films after that, just no good. And yet, what they come from, the comics, I don't think, despite the capes, despite the bright colours, that these stories are necessarily either just for kids or actually for kids at all. The first one that kind of turned my head a bit was Absolute Martian Manhunter. It's this super psychedelic story of a detective who is suddenly consumed by this other perception. The Martian is upon him. And I was telling Lottie this in episode 54, that if you hold a page up to the light, you can see, because the light goes through the page, the Martian is printed on one side and the detective printed on the other, merged. So the Martian is literally in the detective's head. And that's the physical aspect of reading, of having this story in your hands. It's a lovely moment. And from that point on, it was the visuals that brought me back. Where CGI turned me off superhero stories, it was the actual illustration that got me hooked and then put me back onto the story. And Tom King is the guy that I think, if we're talking about dream guests, I would love to chat to Tom King about his writing and his take on these superheroes. Mr. Miracle was what I bought after Absolute Martian Manhunter, and it's wonderful. He can escape anything. And as a recovering avoidant, I think it's funny seeing yourself in a character who is indestructible and potentially can live forever and can escape anything. And then if you see yourself in this sort of person, then accepting by the end of it, when he's singing to his baby son on the sofa, following a hard day's work, having spent weeks in hell fighting hordes of demons, that he's got his feet up on the devil. I don't know if you can see that. And when I told Lottie this, she was just like, that's the point, isn't it? That you can have your struggles, that you can go through life and you can conquer demons and you can overcome challenges and actually still have the devil there, the devil in the background. The anaphora in Mr. Miracle is Darkseid Is. Darkseid, misspelt, of course, in a quirky superhero way. Dark, S-E-I-D, is. He looks a bit like Thanos from the Marvel Universe. And I'm sure some people will get at me for that comparison, but if you're not into comics, you might not know this. So whether Darkseid is the devil, whether Darkseid is a cosmic threat, whether Darkseid is actually depression or anxiety or self-doubt, Darkseid is throughout Mr. Miracle and throughout the DC universe. But what's interesting with Mr. Miracle, with Scott Free, that's our protagonist, Scott is brought up in hell with Darkseid overlooking all of this, and Scott escapes Granny Goodness, the vicious, nasty, but maybe actually quite caring Granny Goodness. Scott escapes Apocalypse. Scott escapes all the monsters and then finds himself on Earth and is bequeathed the title of Mr. Miracle. And he, as the son of God grown up in hell, is pretty much responsible for saving the world. And he does. But he does that in the context of somebody who comes back home every night to spend time with his partner, Big Barda, who also grew up in hell, just so you know, and to raise their child. Barda's pregnant while they're fighting all the demons in hell, and to watch TV, and to be tired in the morning, and to still get up and go again. And while they're fighting all of these demons, while they're going through the circles of hell, they're talking about feng shui in their apartment. They're talking about rooms being too small or furniture needing to be moved. It's so everyday. This couple might last forever. They could live forever. They seem to be indestructible, but they're talking about the most mundane things. And between all of these panels is the phrase, and often just the phrase, Darkseid Is. Scott can escape anything, but can he escape death? Can he escape normal living? At the start, there's this moment where he's on TV and the host asks him about his latest trick. I don't want to give too much away. Tom King does a great job of leaving this ambiguous, so I'm just holding up to the camera, if you're listening, a couple of panels with Scott dressed as Mr. Miracle talking to a TV host, asking him about the greatest trick, which is to cheat death. Scott talks about killing himself as the last big trick. And the reader understands that he's done it, he's achieved it, but the illustrations don't necessarily let us hold on to that. Scott glitches. The TV glitches. In the last panel, Scott's head isn't even there. We actually don't know upon reflection if Scott's alive at all. You know, there's something about reading and subtext, which Human Target does really well, that the words are saying one thing, but the images are doing something else. When our words say one thing, but our faces are doing something else. Our actions are doing something else. The comic does that so well. And yeah, Tom King's comics, huge for that. So Tom's Mr. Miracle talks about cheating death, escaping death, and we don't know as a reader if he has. Throughout all of these fights on a cosmic scale, and yet in the last panel, Scott is on a sofa singing to his son, feet up on a glitched Darkseid. Whether that's to say that Darkseid doesn't exist, or Darkseid is there but only Scott can see him. I don't know. That's what's so wonderful about this story. That's so wonderful about the medium. And I think that's what was so wonderful about the way Lottie put it. The devil will always be there. It's just, how do we live with it? We can't control everything. but we can, for the most part, control how we feel about it. That's what Mr. Miracle does really well. All right. The third one, the third comic that maybe has got me into comics that I haven't stopped thinking about since I bought it and read it, is The Human Target. It's gorgeous. So I'm holding this up to camera now. The front cover is just this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's noir-esque. The colours are definitely pastel throughout. So I've already held up some of the characters involved. You've got Absolute Martian Manhunter in there. You've also got Mr. Miracle just hanging out over here. But some of these covers, man. Something that's nice as well, when you get the collected editions, you get the alternate comics. And again, I'm not a big collector. I'm not necessarily going to be running around trying to pick up every version, every variant of them. But again, just holding up to camera, some of these illustrations, man. So Christopher Chance is the Human Target. He spends his life pretending to be other people. Christopher Chance, the Human Target, takes bullets for people who think that they're going to be killed. And in this story, he's just taken a bullet for Lex Luthor, the big bad in the Superman universe. And Christopher Chance loves a drink. He drinks all the time. He drinks throughout, you know, and this kind of Bond character, you wouldn't expect anything but whiskey or hard liquor to be in this glass. But the thing that does him is some weird tasting water. Christopher Chance has got 12 days to live, ironically, because he drank some off water. And maybe actually this bullet was for him. We don't know, but he wants to find out. And he's got 12 days in which to do it. So if Scott-free, who can escape anything, decides by the end to have the most domesticated life, to have a loving partner and a pregnant again wife and son on his chest following a hard day of battling demons, Christopher Chance knows that death is upon him, and his purpose suddenly becomes to find out who killed him. And yet it's not all guns blazing either. It's more drinking, it's more contemplating, it's more talking to people who mean something. And actually, it's about falling in love again, all over again. Maybe even falling in love with somebody who has done you wrong and allowing that to happen, to have the conversations, to feel held, to feel seen. The duplicities, the depictions of trust and love and anger, they're all in there and they're all real. Like, I'm in love with the aesthetic of it. The story is great. It's not extraordinary, but the premise is interesting. What would you do if you only had 12 days to live? Would it become a YOLO mindset? Would it become Carpe Diem? Would it be standing on desks and proclaiming everything? Or would it just be trying to live the best version of what you have? Driving your car, wearing your favourite clothes, drinking your favourite drinks, catching sunset, spending days on the beach when everybody else would be expecting you to run around. It's a good frame. I think it's a very fitness and thinking frame too. How do you live best with what you have? You're not trying to escape it. You know that the end is coming, but there's still some living to be done. Christopher Chance is interesting as a character because he spends his life pretending to be other people, and then when his identity, his existence is threatened, he's just absolutely himself. And that's who a major character falls in love with. And I think that's who we as the reader fall in love with as well. You know, I didn't know him before this story, so I'm just following him as a guy who's about to die and becoming invested. And I think, again, away from the cosmic slop, while this story, you know, like Mr. Miracle, goes to hell, goes to heaven, we go to a different planet, we go to a space station. A lot of it is just spent on a beach, on a boardwalk, in a smoky bar, talking to people who can't be refused. It's cinematic, it's uncinematic, it's a drive, it's a long conversation, it's long silences. There's a really touching moment where Ice, Chance's love interest. I've just opened up to a random cover here. So we got the book 11 cover there. Whoa. Ice tries to revive Christopher for a second time. And the panels just aren't speech. The panels are all emotion. What do you do when you fall in love with a dying idea? A dying person? What do you do to save them? Can you save them? What do you do when you know you can't save them? I think the big thing that King gets across, that Greg Smallwood gets across, is that you love anyway, that you try and trust anyway, because why not? Some of the key ideas that Fitness and Thinking keeps coming back to are finding beauty in the Tuesday evenings, the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I guess what these narratives do is find the ordinary in the extraordinary. And that other people are key to mental health. That having somebody to talk to, having somebody to love is important. And having the capacity to be loved is really important as well. The third one, the one that I think stops a lot of us from realising our best selves, or being the best partner or son or daughter or parent or mate, is contingent thinking. X then Y. If only I had this, then life would be better. If only I did that, then I would be better. And I think once you recognise that Y isn't necessarily as contingent on X as you thought it was, life does tend to become a little bit easier. If you knew that you only had 12 days to live, would you live differently? If you could accept that the devil would always be there, would you live differently? If only I made it to heaven, then life would be easy. What if this is it? What if heaven is on earth? What if these are the golden years? Because they are, if you choose to be in them. So rather than trying to escape your current reality, your current situation, what can you do in it to make it better? Sure, you could study. Sure, you could drive to a different place. Sure, you could eat different things and drink different things. Could you do that in a way that sets you tomorrow up better? So that tomorrow you isn't thinking, if only I had this, because today you has already gone somewhere to facilitate it. What if you're not in a position to retire early, but you could take an hour at lunch to read a comic and go to a different place and be inspired and tell people about it? I went into work this morning and it wasn't even a forced conversation. Harry on the desk had clearly been thinking in a way too, and asked if what we are is the substrate or the entity. Are we the brain and the body, or are we the thing that thinks about the brain and the body? Madness, 7:30 on a Wednesday morning. Not a conversation I expected to have, but one that I was glad to be a part of. Freedom, we agreed, was about being happy where you are, being happy with who you are, rather than trying to be somewhere else or be someone else. Because we might never escape the box, What if our heads were the prison? What if actually it was this flesh and bone that was keeping us trapped, in a way? But we found a way to live with that, to enjoy it, to make the most of it. You could wait for X and completely miss out on Y. Or maybe Y is closer than you realise. I think that's it. Knowing that we don't have all the time in the world, knowing that we can't control everything that happens around us, but maybe we can affect how we perceive things and react to them. How do we begin to live easier? Maybe better is a word you'd use. Maybe more meaningful lives. It's a question we'll keep on asking, because the answers are always interesting, whether they're right, wrong, fictional or not. Yeah, I'd love to know what stories have turned your head recently, what stories have made you think differently, and which writers inspire you or could be great guests to chat with. What would you ask them? What would you have me ask them? I appreciate you taking the time. Maybe this is on your lunch break, maybe this is on your walk or drive home. But yeah, stepping out just for a second to see that where you are is all right. I appreciate you. I can take a breath. I didn't quite expect to feel like this. As a recovering avoidant, as a persistent procrastinator, I think these stories hit quite hard because it's easy to think that we'll get another chance, that we'll be able to do things differently, that we've got more time, and yet none of that is guaranteed. Tomorrow could be it. Next week. We don't know. In a way, chance is lucky. He knew when the end was and lived accordingly, but why couldn't we do that as well, as best as we can? I want to be more present for the people around me and also for me. My phone is black and white. I've deleted apps linked to strangers. I'm spending more time on the people that are in my life already, and not going out of my way to look for things that I don't have, thinking they'll make my life better. But that's just my approach, based on the conversations and the stories that I've come across this year. How are you living life? I'd love to know. Let me know in a comment, drop a like if you like the episode, and do subscribe so you don't miss another one. And if you think there's somebody who might be interested in the way we think on fitness differently too, share it with them. The more the merrier. We'll build this thing together. Much love. I'll see you in the next one.